Hey guys, GenesissVII here, and I have just completed The Last of Us Part 2. Currently kind of going through a second playthrough to kind of gather up the rest of the collectibles and everything I missed on my first playthrough and get that platinum trophy. So I think I am in the perfect position to give you my review and thoughts of the game. But before we go into it, you are entitled to your own opinion because I know this game has a lot of controversy. So hit the thumbs up button, hit the thumbs down button, but please watch this video in its entirety, see what I have to say, and then the ball is in your court. So with that being said, let's get into my review of The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I'm not one of these people that was really excited for The Last of Us Part 2. I played the first one, I enjoyed the first one, I liked the exploration, I liked the story. The story was obviously the high point of The Last of Us Part 1. Combat was a bit janky in itself, but again, exploration, the banter between characters, story, the graphics for the time for the PS3 was all ticks in my boxes. So when The Last of Us 2 came around, I was like, yeah, I'm going to pick it up. But I was one of these people that seen the leaks, and I seen one particular leak, and if you didn't know, there will be spoilers in this video, and I seen the death of Joel. So I knew that, and I thought, okay, I think I've seen enough, and I don't think I want to pick up this game. Now, fast forward to the state of play on The Last of Us 2, watching the gameplay, it reminded me and gave me some flashbacks of The Last of Us Part 1 and why I enjoyed it so much. And it was like, you know what, ignoring what I've seen with Joel, I'm going to pick this up. And that's what I did. So I think it's only natural that we start off with the story, the most controversial part of this review, I guess you could say. Again, you can agree or disagree, but please listen to what I've got to say. Now, I really like the story. You probably sound very surprised at this, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. But there are a few things that I would have changed, especially when it comes to the pacing of the game. Now, playing through the story at the beginning, playing as Joel, going to Ellie, going to Abby, going back to Ellie, and then going to the climax at the end in the theatre, to then playing through all the 3 days again as Abby, and then having like the epilogue as Ellie and then playing as Abby. It was just too many changes, and I don't know, I just didn't quite click on. I got the story, I enjoyed the story, but I didn't like the way it was structured. Now, if I was to have a change in this, I would probably have a scenario A and a scenario B, a lot like Resident Evil 2. Now, you'd play the story through as Ellie to the point in the theatre, and then you kind of like, I'd probably give it a bit more of a climax and a cliffhanger, and then scenario B unlocks, and then you play scenario B, and once you've completed both of these scenarios, then you play that epilogue. Now, the story as a whole, I thought it was great, and I'm one of those people that really kind of was into Abby and enjoyed her story arc. I got it because at the beginning I hated her. She killed Joel, and I wasn't a fan of that because I was like, Joel and Ellie are the soul of The Last of Us. You take out Joel, Ellie's gonna have to strive on her own, and there's no one to fill that gap. So I was angry, and I was like, I don't really like Abby. But then playing as Abby, her kind of wrote to revenge, and then kind of living with that kind of death of Joel, doing that to Joel, and then kind of, I guess, trying to find a way from the darkness to the light. And I guess Ellie, in a way, was the opposite. She was at the light into the darkness because she was thralled on revenge on Abby. But again, I think the story touched all the parts it needed to. I just thought that the structure was a little bit messed up. Now, the end of the game, the epilogue where Ellie decides, you know what? I think it's time. I think it's time to take out Abby. I've not forgiven her. Tommy has talked me into it, and I'm going to go for it. And then you kind of go to Santa Barbara, and you play as Abby first, and she gets captured by the Rattlers, which I didn't really find as an intimidating enemies because they just looked like they were thrown into there. And then you kind of play as Ellie, and you kind of get captured by the Rattlers, but then you kill the Rattlers because obviously you get bitten in the hand, and yada yada yada. You find Abby, and you have this epic fight, like on the tier of like. Reminded me of Metal Gear Solid 4 when it was Liquid Ocelot versus Solid Snake. And I was thinking, oh, this is definitely going to have some kind of real ending. And then they kind of fall flat, and they kind of go their separate ways. I didn't really like that ending, but I can see why they did that. But as a whole, if they just took that epilogue out, that little epilogue out, I would have been happy with the way it ended in the theatre. Maybe kind of set up for The Last of Us 3. I think a lot of people would agree on that. But there's so many ins and outs, and people disagreeing with the story, people defending the story. My stance is that it is a very good story. The structure of that story was just a bit all over the place. I think in parts I can see why they did it. Having the flashbacks with Ellie and Joel. That should have been a game in its. That should have been like a game in its own. Like that should have been. Just seeing what they did in that 4-year gap would have been amazing, and it probably would have made me even more distraught about Joel dying. But I guess that's a story for another time. But just having the scenario, like the Ellie scenario, the Abby scenario, and then the epilogue, I think that structure would have worked a lot well. But during the game, I guess I kind of seen why they did it the way they did, but it only worked a few times. It didn't work all the time. It was just having flashbacks, and then it was kind of a lost tier of kind of trying to track where you are in the timeline. And the fact that you kind of get towards the theatre ending and then you have to play it all again, you're kind of exhausted from that. You don't want to do that. And I guess a lot of people thought that took away from Abby's story, but again, I kind of was drawn into Abby's story and very much enjoyed it. So I think without going back and forth talking about the story, because I think I go around in circles, because the more I think about it, the more things that kind of come up and crop up and want to talk about the story. But I think it's a good story. If you didn't see the leaks and you went into this blind and you played The Last of Us 1 and going into The Last of Us Part 2, it would have felt very natural. But I think you may have had the same kind of feeling as me with the story just being all over the place. Now, moving on from the story, and I could talk about this forever, because every time I try and finish and wrap up this story segment, things are coming to the head. But I think it's only natural to move on to some really good strong points of the game, and I think we need to move on to the graphics. We're at the end of the PlayStation 4's life cycle, and wow, the graphics, playing this on my 4K TV, PlayStation Pro, absolutely phenomenal. The level of detail from walking in the snow, sliding down mud, the sound effects of the clickers, and when I'm wearing headphones, kind of had that spatial kind of aware, like it didn't felt like just stereo headphones. I felt like I could hear things that were further away in my left ear and things that were further away in my right ear. The sound design and the music choices were on par. Take On Me, what a surprise. The guitars, just the strumming, and the fact that you can the sound design was fantastic. I can't say enough about the sound design. But going back to the graphics, wow, like it didn't make my PlayStation 4 Pro want to take off, but it handled it so well, and it was beautiful. The textures are so sharp, the lighting was absolutely on par. Don't have anything bad to say about the graphics. I think if you were to show me, without letting me know that this was a PS4 game and saying this is what the PS5 is going to look like, I would have gone, you know what, that looks like the PS5. That's phenomenal. But it's the PlayStation 4, and I can only begin to imagine to see what this would look like, because we're going to see it on the PlayStation 5. just the graphical overhauls that we're going to see on that, it will be absolutely insane. So the graphics, the textures, the little details, and like I say, from walking in the snow, running into trees and snow falling off trees, sliding down mud, to even littler things with facial expressions when the characters are interacting with one another. And one thing I really liked is Abby has a fear of heights, and whenever you're playing as Abby, whenever you're near an edge of like a long drop, she suddenly kind of like comes into herself and kind of gets scared, her eyes get wide, and you can hear her heavily breathing. What an attention to detail. And I think this is a nice little segue when it goes to detail, is the notes and the collectibles you find in the game to kind of build up this world. The Last of Us 1 did it so well, and The Last of Us 2 hammers it home, because you read those notes and you do the exploration while you're scavenging. You can really build a story of the world and how people were surviving in Seattle, Santa Barbara, and all the other places that you visit, because it's just amazing. They really thought of everything. And I think graphically and sound design and details, I think I only experienced one glitch, and that was when I had an arrow fired into my shoulder. It glitched and it wasn't in my shoulder, it was like floating above me somewhere around here. But apart from that, I experienced nothing graphically bad. So going on to the gameplay, and mentioning before about me playing The Last of Us and not liking the combat and the shooting. I'm not very good at shooting in third-person games like in Uncharted and Last of Us 1. But this improved everything, and I think with the ability to upgrade your weapons and the detail, looking at those weapons, going back to detail, was a great help, because I am a bad shooter. I panic when I hear sounds, but having the ability to kind of tune up my weapons and have so many options to tackle combat, from stealth, from setting up traps, from everything and anything in between, was such a treat. Sometimes I could go in guns blazing if I just wanted to plow through an area. Sometimes I could set up traps, throw bottles and bricks to distract, maybe set on certain enemies on each other, like throwing a bottle to attract a clicker that will then go towards one of the wolves. And there were so many options, and it's such appreciated with a player like me, because I didn't want to shoot. I didn't want to get into those situations where I wanted to shoot all the time. And the fact that these areas were set up to kind of have all of these different options was much appreciated and very strong in the gameplay avenue. I didn't have any problems with the gameplay. Like I say, everything that The Last of Us 1 faltered with, The Last of Us 2 improved considerably, including the AI. I played through my initial playthrough on normal, and the way that the human enemies can kind of try and flank you, that they're aware, sometimes they're not aware, they're kind of like, oh, is that a person? And you're kind of like crawling past, and then they're like, oh, it's nothing. But sometimes they're on point, they're like, I seen someone over there, or I heard something, and they're straight on it. And the fact that they all kind of communicate each other, they shout each other's names when they die, like, no, Jeffrey, don't do that. Just, it is absolutely such amazing attention to detail, and kind of really gets you involved in those situations, because you're deciding what you need to do, and because everything feels so real, it really immerses you in. And that get a thumbs up from me, especially when I wasn't a fan of the combat in The Last of Us 1. AI, again, on point, but sometimes with your companions, I'm talking Dina, Jesse, Manny, Mia, and all of the other companions you have throughout the game, sometimes I just be getting absolutely mauled by the runners, and Dina is just waiting, I'm like, Dina, come on, help me out. But sometimes I'd be playing, and for example, Jesse would like tackling everything and for me, and I'm just like hiding behind a wall and just thinking, you know, okay, Jesse, go for it. So really, really good. And having two different characters as well, Abby and Ellie, I feel like I need to go into this a little bit of detail, a bit more. They play similar, but different. So they have different arsenal of weapons. Ellie is, I think she's more suited to the stealth, and Abby's very good at that combat because obviously she has been absolutely working it out to kind of plan this revenge on Joel. So her hitting and melee are on point. Obviously they have different upgrade trees, which is also an awesome thing. The fact that they hide them from you until you discover the books is awesome, so you don't kind of like, sometimes I get lost in skill trees when there's too much approached, too much like presented to me, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, I don't know if I should go for this. But the fact that you kind of have that one skill tree to start off with, and once you find the books, it's kind of like you have the right pills to kind of invest in that. I like that, and I enjoyed playing as Abby a lot more, especially just the powerhouse that she is. And I was a big fan of the crossbow when I found that on the boat on the way to the aquarium. I was like, I love the crossbow. But again, Ellie, I like using the bow, and I really like being stealthy with Ellie. So the gameplay is just, there's so many options and so many ways to play. And talking about so many options, I think it's really good to note the amount of accessibility options in this game. I'm talking so many options for audio to kind of enhance or lessen the audio experience. The amount of options for colorblind people is insane. HUD changes, difficulty from every single aspect of the AI. You can customize the difficulty of this game to a breeze, to one of the most ridiculously hard games you will ever play. And that has to get some kudos, because games don't have, well, games I haven't played have had accessibility options like The Last of Us Part 2. It is absolutely crazy the amount of options there is. Definitely have a look, have a mess around. You can really tune the gameplay to the way you want to play, and that is much appreciated and can grant more playthroughs. Replayability value it's there. Not to mention, again, with the collectibles, going through and make sure you're fully upgraded and getting that platinum trophy, which I'm doing now. I'm getting there slow and steady, but it's amazing the amount of options in the game. And I think that's everything I want to talk about. I've hit the story. I could go on for ages about the story, but I think it does. The story is good. It's just the way it's structured is a little bit weird, and you can get a little bit lost and lose interest in characters that you should be interested in. But I managed to kind of draw myself in and be invested in the characters to the best I could, and it gave me a great story experience. Graphics, phenomenal. Nothing bad to say, because I didn't experience anything bad. Gameplay, everything is tuned up to 10 from The Last of Us Part 1. So if you played The Last of Us Part 1 and you enjoyed that gameplay, you can obviously enjoy The Last of Us Part 2. I think a lot of people are not going to pick up The Last of Us Part 2 without playing the first one, and I think it's a natural progression from Naughty Dog, where they went from the first one to Left Behind to the second part. And gameplay, the options are there. There's so many different options, from the way you play, the accessibility options. So that's summarizing everything in this video. I think I've touched on everything I can. I'm not going to give this a score. All I'm going to say is, if you played the first Last of Us, play the second one. You won't be disappointed. Again, you'll have your own opinions on the story and the characters. That's what the comment section below is for. If you guys want to debate and discuss, keep it clean down there, respect one another. And if you have enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you haven't and you're really not a fan of The Last of Us 2, then let the people know by hitting the thumbs down button. But again, let's keep this place as clean as we can with the comments and the discussions. Thank you for watching my review on The Last of Us Part 2. I hope you enjoyed it. It is a hell of a game, and it is, like I say in the title of this video, it is a great game. I've been GenesissVII, thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.